Hi, I'm Chris Williams, and I'm in the Office of Assessment and Accountability. Today I'm going to be talking to you about our back-to-school trainings on Access. And with Access, we're going to start with our screener to get them to that particular point of access. So let's begin. Now, when we get to our screener, we're going to be talking about, because that's the first thing we do to be able to identify if a student is an EL or not. We have to do what we call a home language survey, and then move on from that to testing with students. Either if you're a kindergarten student, you would be taking the KWAPT, which is the Kindergarten WIDA Access Placement Test. And that is for kindergarten as well as first semester, first grade would also take that KWAPT. Now, if I'm in my second semester of first grade and all the way to grade 12, I would be taking our WIDA online screener. And we're going to be talking about these two things as we go through at the very beginning of the presentation. And then if these students are identified through the home language survey and also meet the criteria for entering, then they will be given the access, and we'll talk about the access as well, the alternate access, some resources for you, and then also provide show you some screenshots of the websites that you should be referring to with our English learners. So we know it is a time for you all to get back to school, and so we know that there's lots of things that you all have to do to get your students ready for that back to school. So we just want to talk to you through some guidelines on giving the screener. Because we do not have a remote screener. People say, Chris, do we? And I was like, no, we do not have a remote screener that we are using for Access or for our WAPT. So what can we do then since we don't have a remote screener? Well, we can, if you are in person and providing, school for students who are coming to you in person, then you can give that to the students. You can go through the home language survey, give the screener, and then if they qualify, then you would give them access in that January-February window. But if they're not in person, what are you going to do? So if they are going to be doing their schoolwork virtually, then what you would have to do is for those students who, whose parents have filled out the paperwork, the home language, and then also have filled out the enrollment packet as well as filled out the home language survey. Because remember, that has to be a separate form that they have to do for our English learners. And so if a parent has went on and said to any of the 4 required questions on the home language survey, then you would have to schedule a time, if the student is virtual, to be able to come in with the parent and be administered the screener one-to-one. So those are our 2 options for giving the screener. And we're going to be talking about what some of those questions are that we're going to be given on that home language survey. So when you have the students who come in, you're going to give each new student in the district the home language survey. There are a set of 4 questions that are on that survey. It is, what is the language most frequently spoken at home? What language did your child learn when he or she first began to talk? Which language does your child most frequently speak at home, and what language do you most frequently speak to your child? If any of those are is answered another language other than English, and another language is present, you want to, before you give the screener, you want to make sure that is correct. So you want to make sure that you talk with the parents, make sure that the student is truly EL, and then some of the things you want to look at when you're looking at that survey is, what is the first language of the student? If it's another language other than English, and then if that language is spoken, in the home, then that is what we call a true EL. Now, we do have people who, sometimes mom may have, a significant other who lives in the home that speaks another language, but it may be a boyfriend or etc. And so, that is not what a true EL person is, because the mother speaks English, but her boyfriend may speak another language. But that doesn't mean that that child does speak that language. So you want to really look closely at what is put onto those home language surveys. You also want to make sure you, like I said, follow up with the parent and the child. And, usually when you're talking to the students, you can also pick that up if there's another language present as well. If they answered any of those 4 required questions on that separate form that you have in the district, then you're going to give them, if they're in kindergarten and first semester, first grade, the KWAPT, or if they're in second semester, first grade, and through grade 12, if they're in those grade levels, then they would take the WIDA online screener. And to get access to, both of these, you have to have username and passwords to be able to get to that. For training as well for your district, and then for the kindergarten WAPT, you also have to have, if you have an access account, and I have sent out to all of the districts in Kentucky, to the district assessment coordinators, a spreadsheet of who their previous test administrators were, as well as the link to the Google form, where if you've got any new personnel or you need to delete anyone from having an account, then you would add that to that Google form that I had sent to the district assessment coordinators. Also on that is another thing that you can do on that Google form is also for the professional development. If you want any of your staff to participate in the free opportunities from WIDA for professional development throughout the school year. And we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. Now that you have your access account, what can you get to? Well, you can get on the WIDA website. You will go through the trainings for administering the kindergarten WAPT and also the WIDA online screener. There's also PowerPoints, presentations that I have done on the kindergarten and on the WIDA online screener. And those are posted on the Access page of the KDU website that you can take a look at. But remember, you have to go through the trainings on the WIDA website as well, and go through those trainings underneath that secure portal once you get logged in with your Access account. And those passwords are specific to each test administrator. You are not to share any of the passwords that you have, because those are specifically to you as a test administrator. And And then once you have that access and you have gone, access account and you've gone through the trainings, then you want to make sure that you give a copy to your district assessment coordinator, so that way they can give you rights into WIDA AMS. And yes, WIDA AMS is a separate account. That is our Data Recognition Corporation site, DRC site, for WIDA AMS, and that's where you'll be, that's our WIDA Assessment Management System. And that's where you're going to put in any new personnel who in your district who's going to be administer the screener and access. Also, you're going to also put them in WIDA AMS. If it's for the screener, you will have to enter in the student's information. It is not pre-populated for you in there because it should be just who is new and has come in and has put another language other than English on their home language survey. So we do not pre-populate WIDA AMS for the screeners. And then for the kindergarten, you would, for those students who are going to take the kindergarten WAPT, that is free and downloadable off of the WIDA website, and you can get that underneath the secure portal. All the materials that you would have to print out to administer it. And remember, with the kindergarten WAPT, it is one-to-one. And then with the WIDA online screener, you can log into WIDA AMS and put the students in test sessions and print out those test tickets to be able to give that student the screener to be able to see if they are an English learner or not. Now, once you have given the screener, and people say, well, Chris, how long do we have, to do the home language survey, to give the screener, and then also, meet with the parents, have a program services plan, and put that information, that testing information that you got from the screener into Infinite Campus. You have to do that within the first 30 calendar days of enrollment, or 2 weeks of enrollment during the school year. Now, you're probably saying, Chris, is there any way that we can have some, some leeway with that first 30 calendar days of enrollment, or 2 weeks, of enrollment during the school year? As of today, we do not have, that is what we have, because remember, this is a federal requirement. And so we have submitted that particular question into our federal contact at the U.S. Department of Education to see if they would give us some kind of leeway with that first 30 calendar days of enrollment to get all of this done. Once we get that information, we will be sharing that out either in a Monday DAC email, special DAC email, if it's during the week, and then we will also make sure that our Title III contacts also, that both Title III and the Office of Assessment and Accountability also share that information. So that way your Title III contacts will know, as well as your district assessment coordinators will know if that's a possibility. Now, also, you want to make sure that a student has, if they are identified as an English learner off of the screener, that they have a program services plan in place for every identified EL students. You also have to make sure that on the those who are doing the program services committee, and that's what I said, a committee. It's just like if you have a student who is special ed, you have an IEP committee, and we do have ELs who have both. One does not trump the other. The EL teacher and the special ed teacher should be working together and the student would have a program services plan for their language services, and also they would have an IEP for their special education needs as well. So who can be on that program services committee? We can have any of our, we definitely want our EL teachers to be on there. We want our content teachers to be on there because, you know, when they're not being provided services by the English, you know, the EL teacher, that the content teacher can provide those services in the classroom as well. And so we want to make sure both of them are involved in this committee. We also want a principal to be on that. If a student has an you know, an IEP as well, we want our special ed directors to be also on those committees as well. So that way you're working together to provide the best services and what accommodations are needed for our English learners. It is very important that the accommodations are individualized for each English learner, that not every EL student has the same accommodations. It's the same as for our IEP students. They don't have the same accommodations either. It is specific to the needs of the student. You want to make sure that you have data to back up of that accommodation for that student, and you want to make sure that those accommodations for instruction as well as assessment are entered both underneath that program participation for our English learners in Infinite Campus. And then also that you have identified them as an English learner, you have put their screener scores in there. And then if they have been an English learner, you know, last year and have taken access, that you do have their current access scores are in Infinite Campus as well, and on that current program services plan. Now, people ask every year, Chris, do I enter in the access scores, you know, when I get them, because you got those back in April online in WIDA AMS. You do not have to enter those into Infinite Campus. You just have to make sure they're on the program services plan. Now, we will send our office, the Office of Assessment and Accountability, we send a file to our Infinite Campus contact, and they will make sure that all the access scores are pushed down from the state into Infinite Campus on that tab as well. So all of your assessment scores go in just like they do for, you know, if you have ACT, or, you know, if you've got students who are taking the ACT, you know, K-Prep, etc. All those scores are pushed down from the state. And so our access scores are a state required assessment just like anything else. And so we will make sure those are put in there for you. And then, like I said, this is a federal, you know, mandate that we have to assess annually and who are identified as an English learner with an English language proficiency test. And our English language proficiency test that we give is access. And then for our students who are significant, who have significant cognitive disabilities, then we give them the alternate access for ELs. Then we also have the kindergarten assessment as well for our students. Now, when you're looking at the program services plan, you want to make sure that you have the essential elements of a program services plan. You want to make sure all of these elements are on that program services plan because these are the required elements federally. And you want to make sure that we do have the elements of a program services plan, because we also put that into our state regulations as well, is that a home language survey has to be given, that you have to have a, you know, a current program services plan. and that anyone on that committee who is, that is going to be involved in providing instruction for that student is on that committee, and that anyone who's going to be working with an EL student in the classroom has a copy of that current program services plan. And so that way they know what a content teacher, what those scores mean when the student gets those back from Access, and knows how to provide instruction, because we do have valuable resources on the WIDA website that talks about all of these things. It talks about the access, the alternate access criteria, how to be, the decision tree, how to be, placed into the alternate access. Also, it has, the manuals and et cetera for our English learners who are going to be taking Access. All of these resources are on the WIDA website, and we'll talk about that and show some screenshots of what are going to be important resources for you for our English learners. Now, let's go into the online screener scores, and let's talk about, if I'm in grades, 1 through 12, and I'm in that second semester of first grade, I'm going to be taking, if I score less than an overall composite of a 4.5 on that screener, then I'm going to be what we call an EL, and I will be placed in the EL program, and the student would take Access tentatively scheduled for January. And we do say tentatively because, we are in our COVID-19, and, we've had some pushback already from mandated, we've had some mandates as well. But we've also had our governor who's come on and, and is wanting districts to push back their in person. So, we know this is still ongoing since March, when we had to shut down completely and go to, doing our instruction online with our students. So just keep apprised that, these dates, even though we do say we do have a schedule, that, those could change depending on what is the situation going on in our state closer to that time. What happens if our students score if they score a proficiency level of a 4.5 on the WIDA screener? Then they are what we call initially fully English proficient. They're IFEP students. They would not be considered EL. They're what we call IFEP. The student is not EL, would not take Access tentatively scheduled for January. They would not have a program services plan in place, and they would not be given Access. So, and you wouldn't, what you would want to do is to make sure if they are a IFEP that is put into Infinite Campus, that the scores for the WIDA online screener are entered into Infinite Campus as well. So that way, if the student moves to a new district, and because we know they are most mobile population that we have in our state, so you want to make sure that information is correct in Infinite Campus for our EL students, whether they're EL or not. So that way, if they do move to the next district, the district, when they request all of their records, that will follow with them as well, and that we all have the same, information on the student and can go forth. Now, and the same thing happens if I'm an EL student. I want to make sure that if I'm taking the screener, that everything is on there, is in Infinite Campus on that enrollment tab. Underneath program participation, I want to make sure that on that first tab that it has that I am an EL student. If I score less than a overall composite on the screener. And then also make sure that my screener scores are entered in to Infinite Campus, because that is what you in the district have to enter in. You don't have to enter in access scores, but you do have to enter in screener scores into Infinite Campus. And then also you want to make sure that the program service type that the student is going to have is in there, as well as what accommodations for our content assessments that the student is going to have for both instructionally and for assessment. And all of this information too is underneath our state regulation as well, in the inclusion of special populations training that you have to give to every year prior to administering the screener and access. That even though you have taken all your quizzes and etc. as a test administrator, you also have to have that training as well. And all of that training has to be on file with the district assessment coordinators. Now, what do we do with our kindergarten students? You know, we give them the kindergarten WAPT, which is the WIDA Access Placement Test. Now, you know, they are not going to get what we call a proficiency score. They're going to get, well, they're not going to get an overall, you know, composite for their students. So they're going to get like what we call oral proficiency, because remember, for our kindergarten students, they're not going to take all 4 domains of the screener. They're only going to take the listening and speaking part of the screener for any kindergarten and our first semester first grade students. So they don't take all 4 domains. And so they also only get a listening and speaking scores. Their yield is a 1 to a 30. And that is in that high, mid, or low range, depending on what they score. Now, our kindergartens, regardless of their score on the KWAPT, would be an English learner. They would have a program services plan. And then in Infinite Campus, what you want to do for our kindergarten students is to, because they don't have, you know, like overall composites, and they don't have individual composite levels for the KWAPT, then you're just going to put in the date that you administer the screener for those students into Infinite Campus. And you want to make sure that you do have a record that you have put that in there for our kindergarten students underneath that program participations tab in Infinite Campus. Now, our kindergarten students cannot exit until after first grade access. One is because, you know, we have they're only taking the listening and speaking part of the WAPT. They don't get into all 4 domains of the kindergarten until they are given access in January and February. And you know that if you are teaching kindergarten, and that a lot of times you don't get into the language of the content around reading and writing until closer to that December or January timeframe. And so, and plus, you know, they don't they don't get an overall composite either until they get access. And so and then there's no tier levels. And so, you know, for our exit criteria for access, it has to be an overall composite of a 4.5 on a tier BC. And kindergarten students do not receive any tier levels. So we feel it is appropriate that those students who are identified in kindergarten, that they also will have that much instruction after Christmas in those content areas that they're going to need to be successful. in reading and writing as well. And then they will continue that into first grade. And then once they take the first grade access, and then if they score an overall composite in first grade after taking first grade access of that overall composite of 4.5 on a tier BC, then they can exit from an EL program. But for our kindergartens, they cannot exit until after first grade access. Now, we do have our students who, next slide. They do have, you know, we have parents who refuse, you know, services for our English learners as well. And we're going to be showing that particular, what those options are for our kindergarten students who score, you know, those 29 to 30, and those are composite raw scores. And so if a student who is kindergarten, because remember, they're only taking the listening and speaking domains, what you would want to do is post in Infinite Campus that they are an English learner. You would also make sure that you put in the score excuse me, not the score. You would put in the date that you administered, because we don't have any way of putting in raw scores of a 1 to a 30. We only have in Infinite Campus proficiency levels and overall composites for the domain scores, and for the individual domain scores, and for when they're all four domains are combined to give the overall composite. And so you can't do that with kindergarten. And so they would be an English learner, and they would be, their program services type would be structured English immersion. And then they'll have a program services plan and be given access in January, even if they score a 29 to 30, which is at the exceptional skill level. Now, if they score less than a 29, which is that low, mid, or high skills, they're still going to be an English learner. So you would post them in Infinite Campus as EL on that first tab. On the next tab, you would put in where it says assessment scores, you would put the date that they were administered, the kindergarten WAPT. And then you would have a program services plan implemented for them, and you would put in the appropriate service type, program services type that the student would need based off of those scores. And then they would take access administered in January. And remember, when they take access, they're going to take all four domains of access in kindergarten. They're going to take the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Here is the screenshot. I do want to go through the tabs for you, so that way we get that information correct in Infinite Campus. It's very important, especially when we get to rosters and get to ordering our access materials. It's very important that we have our English learners labeled in Infinite Campus underneath that first tab, which is the EL program tab. The next tab is the EL assessments tab, and that's where you put the screener scores, and where we will also put in the access scores. Then on the third tab, you'll see here is the EL services tab. That's the program services type. Are you going to be, you know, pulling the student out? Are you going, you know, out of the regular classroom to be providing those EL services? You know, etc. Then on the fourth tab is your EL accommodations tab. That is very important for our content assessments, you know, for our English learners who are going to be taking the content assessments in grades 3 through 11. So you want to make sure that underneath that tab that you have both the instructional accommodations, and remember, there's a lot more instructional accommodations than there are assessment accommodations. And for the assessment accommodations, the only way that you can have accommodations on access is if you have an IEP, not if you have a program services plan, because the reason is because with access, we're trying to see how well they are acquiring the English language. So we want to see how well they are proficient in the English language levels of a 1 to a 6. So that's a little bit different than our content assessments. So you always want to make sure that you look at those manuals, that you go through the administration code training and the inclusions of special populations training to know and read those manuals closely for every assessment, because the accommodations are different for those. So we want you to make sure that you do follow those. And for access, we follow the ones that are in the access manual. And for our content assessments, we follow the ones that are on this EL Accommodations tab. So you want to make sure that you don't just put the instructional accommodations, because if you forget to put the assessment accommodations, we check that information and we'll say, we don't know whether the student had been receiving those accommodations or not throughout the year. So it's very important that you do put those on those tabs. And sometimes districts have different data system that, they have Infinite Campus, which is out. This is where is our authoritative source of getting all of our data from. But we do have districts who may have a separate database besides Infinite Campus. And if they do use that, you want to make sure that it is both the accommodations are both in Infinite Campus and in your particular database if you keep it somewhere, this data somewhere else. But for the Office of Assessment and Accountability and for the Kentucky Department of Education, Infinite Campus is our place for that, for our data, because that's where we pull from. And we pull from state edition of Infinite Campus, not where the schools and districts enter their data in. Because that data, what you put into Infinite Campus should roll up to our state edition, and then that's what we get to pre-populate your rosters for you, also to pre-populate some of the SDRR for you, as well as pre-populating WIDA AMS when it comes to access testing, and also for our other content assessments for K-Prep, etc. All of that, and for ACT. Those, we pull all of that information from Infinite Campus. So you want to make sure those tabs are correct. And if you want a detailed information of how to enter in all of this information and make sure it's correct, you want to make sure you go to this link that's on this slide. It says EL Data Standards. It is linked to the data standards that that will walk you through every step of Infinite Campus. And remember, if a student exits, off of access, that you do have put underneath that first tab, that you have the identified date that they exit the program. Also, and then it should pre-populate that the student is in first year monitoring, etc. And that is automatically done once you go in and put that the student is, not, that is, has exited off of our EL status. And then also make sure that the assessment tab also has those access scores to reflect that the student had exited from that. And then also screener scores. If the student exited in second semester, first grade through 12th grade off of the screener, that those scores are in there, and those reflect that that student did score that 4.5. Because that's going to be very important. We always look back If you make any changes to rosters or during the data review process that you're in for ELs, we do always go back to Infinite Campus to check that information. Now, also, we do have that just to kind of giving you, this gives you the pathway of getting in to enter those scores in. So underneath that, when you go into search in Infinite Campus, you'll go into the index and go underneath student information, and then it'll be program participation. And you'll be able to see EL program participation underneath that tab for that student, underneath that student information path. And then that's where you're going to be able to put in your assessment scores and be able to see that as well for your English learners. We do have parents every year who refuse EL services. That is a right of a parent to refuse EL services, but they are still an EL, even though the parent has refused services. The student is still EL until they meet our exit criteria of access of that 4.5 overall composite on a tier BC. They would still have to have that current program services plan with their EL accommodations in Infinite Campus. And also, instead of the EL instruction would be in the regular classroom by the regular classroom teacher. And then they would still take access for ELs in January. Now we've gone through a lot about the screener. Now let's move into access. Now we will have specific trainings on access that I'll show you where those will be located on our KDE website on our access page later on in the presentation. So let's begin with the access schedule. Now this access schedule is for this upcoming school year. Because during last year, we were able to complete access testing, and so we were able to get our scores. We were one of the lucky states to be able to get in before COVID-19 happened. And so we were able to get our results. You were able to write your program services plan, and then also be able to get into to go through the data access data review process for access and alternate access that is happening now in SDRR during that January, because of that January-February test window. We're able to do that data review process for you in August. And that is scheduled, that is still going on. It started on August the 7th through the 21st in SDRR. And so make sure that you are doing that data review process as a district assessment coordinator. Now let's get into what's going to happen now with our current access schedule. Remember, for access for ELs, this covers our access, our kindergarten, and our alternate access students. And for kindergarten and for alternate, they take a paper pencil assessment, and they will always take a paper pencil assessment. But for access, for any other students who are not kindergarten or alternate, they will be taking the access online and through in WIDA AMS, just like they did when they had to take the screener. So then that's the same place it houses for DRC houses the same place for access as they do the screener. And so we're going to talk about the ordering window. And remember, all these dates are tentative. They could change because of our situation that we are still currently in with COVID-19. And then let's talk about these. The first thing you'll see is the test materials ordering. That will open up September 29th through October 27th. You will, as a DAC, will receive information from DRC letting you know that it is opened. And then you would use your WIDA AMS account that is given to you by DRC, that you would go in and order those materials. Also, there will be a PowerPoint that will go with the test materials ordering, so you know how to order your access materials and your alternate access materials and your kindergarten materials. And then also if you need any accommodated test materials, that PowerPoint will go through in detail of, and it'll also have screenshots for you of how to order. Then the next date is the online test setup. You will start in your district setting up your computers for access. Now, some of you will already have your test set up already for the screener, because you have to do that, you know, already before this December the 3rd comes. But it will officially open for access test setup, and your students will be pre-populated in there as of on December the 3rd. And you will be able to set up your materials anytime that you are going to get ready during that test window that you're going to be giving the assessment. So you want to make sure everything is ready to go, is ready to set up for screener prior to this. And then December 3rd is when you'll make sure everything is ready for access. And your students will already be pre-populated into test sessions when they get, when this opens in December 3rd. Also, it opens the next window, which is once this online test setup is open, it's also the same time that opens when you're going to receive your test materials from DRC. And also, if you had any students who moved in after October 27th through that 12, you know, through December as of that 3rd, if any of those students moved in during that time or after, you'll be able to put in an additional test materials window to be able to get them materials if they're kindergarten, or the accommodating materials, or if they need for our kindergarten as well. So be looking, those are important dates for you. Another thing is the test window. It's very important that the test window, it will start a little later this year. It'll start January the 6th and go to February the 17th. It's just a few days, you know, long, you know, few days from our original dates as we usually do, to give districts back, to give time back into, get them back in after Christmas break. Also, once that window closes on the 17th, then you will have from the 17th, and then all of you'll have time to pack up any kindergarten accommodating materials or your alternate and be able to ship those back. And then also your students who are taking Access Online, who are in grades 1 through 3, remember they have to take the writing paper pencil. That's the only domain they take. The rest of them are all online, and that's just for grades 1 through 3. And so then you would pack up all those materials, and it should be limited amount, and ship those back on February, by February 24th to DRC. Then once that happens, DRC closes that window, and what they'll do is once they receive all the materials on the 24th, they'll start scanning all of that demographic information from the test booklets that were submitted, and then also what is entered in the online, and be getting ready for what we call pre-reporting data validation window in WIDA AMS as well. So all of this information that you see here, all of this occurs in WIDA AMS, and that is a separate password that you have to have. And people say, well, Chris, how do I get a WIDA AMS account? If you are a DAC or a technology person, I have already submitted your name for this upcoming school year as a DAC list. I have sent that to DRC to go ahead and get you, if you're a new DAC, to get you set up, or if you're a technology coordinator, to be able to get set up for a WIDA AMS account. Now, once you as a DAC get that WIDA AMS account from DRC, then you would set up anyone in your district who needs access to WIDA AMS. You would enter their information in, and then what schools that they're going to be giving access as well, and giving them those permissions. Now, also with the pre-reporting data validation, that'll start March 17th and go through March 31st. That's that window that your tests have already been received at DRC. They've scanned everything and have put the demographic information in, and give you one more last chance to go in and check the demographic information of the students. If you had any students who did not test and you forgot to remove them from a test session, this will be the time to be able to do that, and you would contact me and we'd be able to walk through those steps. Also, there will be a PowerPoint presentation to help you with how to, if you got new students into your district, how to get them set up in WIDA AMS and put them into test sessions after that 12/3 date. And then there's going to be a presentation on, for your grades 1 through 3 who only take the writing, and they need, you need to find the tier level report to be able to look for to see what tier level that they would be, that they have, they're going to need for you for when you pull their writing test booklet. So, and remember, for our grades 1 through 3, before you pull a tier level, you have to make sure that you have completed the listening with them online and the reading domains online before you go to the tier report in WIDA AMS. And there is a presentation that will help you with this on the access page. Also, when this closes on the 31st, then DRC goes the next step, which is they will receive all of that information you put in during data validation window, the demographic information. If a student didn't get tested and should have had both of those, you should have put a do not score, into WIDA AMS. Then all of that information you're going to see on those district reports when you receive those online in WIDA AMS starting May 5th this year. And then your printed reports, hopefully, everything goes well, you'll be able to get printed reports on May 14th. And the reason I said hopefully and keep my fingers crossed on that 5/14, the printed reports, is because of COVID happened this year, and so we were shut down, and so the districts were not doing in person, so we had to hold those printed reports until August the 13th of this school year. So just because you don't receive printed reports, maybe at a later date, they'll always be online for you in WIDA AMS. And then we have one last thing, which is our score correction window. Starting May 5th, when you get those printed reports and you go, oh my goodness, why do I have 2 reports on a student? That was because one reason is because during that pre-reporting data validation in March, you forgot to make sure both records in WIDA AMS, all the demographic information matched both records for the student. And so that's the reason why, and then we have to go back and correct that during that May 5th. So it's trying to be proactive, try to get those things done during March. So that'll be less things that we have to do for that May 5th through the May 19th. Now our exit criteria, I have stated what it is. You can see it here on the slide. It has not changed for this upcoming school year. Now we're going to move into the alternate access for ELLs. Now, alternate access for ELLs is for those students who have significant cognitive disabilities. Okay, they also can be they're established as an English learner. They have, a significant cognitive disability, and it also, their disability precludes them from, taking the regular access with accommodations. And so now we do want to see that third participation, because let's look at that, because it says participates or is expected to participate in the alternate K-Prep program. Because for our alternate students, our alternate K-Prep doesn't start until grade 3. But for access, we start K through 12. And so that's different than our content for alternate K-Prep, which starts grades 3 through 12. So for alternate access, we would have to identify if those students would, based off the criteria for alternate access, except for they may not be in that grade 3 yet. So the IEP team is the one who determines whether the student takes alternate. And they also, if you are not going to identify those students, if you're going to wait and identify those students later, then you have to they would still have to take the regular access. So, the IEP team determines whether that student would be on the alternate track and would take the alternate access, or they would take the regular access with accommodations. And remember, our students who are alternate access have an IEP, and they're the only ones who get accommodations. Any student who has an IEP are the only ones who get accommodations on our access test, not a program services plan. Now you're probably saying another question here, Chris. In previous years, the alternate access starts at grades 1 through 12. Well, for the paper pencil assessment, yes, it is, but the federal government says that has to also be given at K. And so we don't have an alternate K for our English learners. So what are we going to do this year? Well, we can't, the federal government will not allow us to have a exemption anymore after this past school year 1920. So going into the 2021 school year, if you've got any students who are K alternate, they would have to take the K access. So that is new this year, and I'll make sure I mention that also in my overview of access trainings too, when it gets to the new part and we go into more details about this. Exit criteria, here's the exit criteria for alternate. It is an overall composite proficiency level of PL2, and that is also stated in our checklist that we do have. Both the access and the alternate access exit criteria are documents that are on our Kentucky WIDA access page. And in those checklists, it does state our exit criteria for both our paper assessments, which is our alternate access, and then it also tells for our paper assessment for our kindergarten that they can't exit until after first grade access. And then for our online checklist, it tells you what our access our access exit criteria is for those students. So just want you to make sure that you do look at those checklists. They are very important pieces of information for you to help you on several things, and we'll talk about that once we get to the page, so that way we can go through it together. Now we have timelines and resources for you. What should I be doing now as a DAC? Well, during this time, you should be getting ready for having your technology person, having them have the computer set up, ready to give the screener and kindergarten WAPT, whether you're coming back in August or most of you coming back in September. And then, so you have to make sure you have all the home language survey done, administer the kindergarten WAPT for kindergarten students, and the WIDA online screener for everyone else. You also have to make sure that you have created a program services plan, that the screener scores are in there, and that into Infinite Campus. For kindergarten WAPT, it's just the date that you administer. For grades first semester and kindergarten, you would just enter in those dates. For second semester, first grade, and through grade 12, you would do the date administered and all the individual scores. Also, you have to make sure all your test administrators for WIDA Screener and KWAPT have looked over the screening trainings on the Access website, that they have taken the screener scores on the WIDA website starting July 1, because that's when our school year starts. And so those, anyone who starts taking the screener, whether it be for kindergarten or for the online, that starts July 1, always every year. And they have to pass it with 80% or above to administer it. DACs, you want to make sure that that they have also had the administration code and inclusion of special populations training, and that once they have taken the quizzes, that they give you a copy of those screener quiz scores so you can keep on file in your district office, as well as the kindergarten and alternate access scores as well. Any of those scores, you want to make sure all of that is in there. When they take the screener, you would want, if they're going to be administering the online screener, they have to be assigned a special permission to be able to do that as a test administrator. And so you as a DAC, once you get their quiz score and you have that on file in your district office, then you as a DAC will go in and assign in WIDA AMS underneath their permissions educator scoring, and then they can go in once the student has completed the screening online. Then the test administrator can score the domains of speaking and writing in WIDA AMS. Also, timelines for you for access. Let's talk about that, because you also have to, you're having access data review in SDRR at this point. We've talked about that early in the presentation. Just wanted to remind you about that. It is going on. It started August the 7th and goes to the 21st at noon on the 21st. That's Eastern Standard Time. It will close for any new tickets. So you want to make sure you get your individual changes in during this time. Also, I have sent to every district assessment coordinator the spreadsheet. I sent you an email with your spreadsheet test administrators from last year, and also the Google form that you will add any new person, or if you need anybody deleted, their accounts deleted, or if they need any WIDA e-learning accounts, that will be in there. Also, we have, you should also be going in and Dax, I've updated your district contacts for this year for access. In WIDA assessment management, I've sent that to DRC, so that you should be getting from DRC an email with your WIDA AMS account. Also, your technology coordinator should have a WIDA AMS account, so that way they can get to their technology information to be able to upgrade and the software that is available in WIDA AMS that has to be put onto all of your computers to be able to do the screener and also for access. Now, I talked about that e-learning, that professional development. That is an opportunity for any EL content teachers, any administrators. You can, even if they're not going to administer access, and they work with English learners, they can have that just that e-learning workshop. And if they're going to administer access, they will be set up an e-learning workshop as part of their permissions. So that is available to you for this past year. That started September 1 of last year, and it ends August 31st of this coming year. Then the new ones that are added for this coming year, those e-learning workshops will start. So you want to make sure that before August 31st, that you have completed the prior year's e-learning workshops, because you'll receive an email from, just a friendly email from WIDA letting you know that it will be closing for this current school year as of August 31st, and then the new ones will be available September 1. And so you can start getting any new personnel that you need that needs to have e-learning. If they had an e-learning account last year, they would still use that. But if you've got any new people that you want to have an e-learning account, that is wonderful, because I'd be more than glad to add that to the list to be able to provide for you as a district as well. So make sure you get those done. Also, they will send information through the WIDA listserv, and there'll also be a flyer on our Kentucky WIDA's website page that will talk about the new e-learning accounts that will be available starting September 1 of 2020. So that gets you through those e-learning, and take advantage of those, because those are free resources that WIDA provides for you, and you have a year to get those completed. And they always start September 1 and always go to August 31st of that year. So take advantage of those because they have valuable things to help you with your English learners, both content-wise and access-wise, and help you with your English learners in the classroom too. So take advantage of those workshops. Okay, now next slide. The next slide is the WIDA website. Let's talk about this Kentucky page. This Kentucky page, you'll see it is hyperlinked for you to take you straight to the WIDA website page that has our Kentucky information. Every state that is part of the WIDA consortium does have access to this Kentucky page. It is on their WIDA website. All you have to do is go to the member page and be able to drop down in case you forget where the link is. Also, this link is also on our access page, and we'll show you a screenshot of that in just a minute. This Kentucky page on the WIDA website has the assessment dates that I talked to you about. It also has the requirements and resources for you. It has the checklist that I was telling you about. It has our contact information, both for assessment and the program side of it. It has, you know, where do you get your login information for this? It also has the professional development that's also on this as well. And then on our access page of the KD website, you can see over, it has all of the information about the access for ELLs. And underneath the access for ELLs, we have our kindergarten, we have our alternate, and we have our access for ELLs. So we just want to make sure that you do have all of this information, and that for our access, you want to make sure that it does have our window over there to the right. It does have important links to link you to the Kentucky's WIDA page, also to the WIDA website, to WIDA AMS, also to our English language development standards to help you with instruction for our English learners. It has it to the Access EL's assessment page, the alternate Access EL page. It has it to the WIDA screener, to the kindergarten WAPT. It also has accessibility and accommodations for access for our students who have IEPs. And then it also has our information for our technology people in our district. And then also, you know, if you want to review the AXA for EL standards, there's a link to that to be able, and that just showed you that that was open for you to be able to do. There's trainings underneath that has screener trainings as well as access trainings, and also our access rosters. Here is the contact information, my contact information, both my email. You can click on the link. It'll straight take you to my email address, to our office, and my extension is 4750. And then I just want you to know that we do have other back to school trainings. We have this one on access. We also will have ACT. We have one on ACT, alternate assessment, end of course, and then also the kindergarten screen. All of these are valuable resources and trainings that we have in our division. So I just want to conclude to say thank you all for everything you do for our English learners. I know this during COVID, it brings a lot of you know, you don't know how it's going to be in your district, but we do know that we are here to support you any way possible, and anything that you need, our office is here to support you in the Office of Assessment Accountability, and all of our other departments in the Kentucky Department of Education are here to support you through your reopenings. And hopefully that it goes smooth for you. And you all, any questions you have about English learners, you're more than welcome to contact me. I'll be more than glad to work with you. I hope you all have a wonderful day and enjoy.